today and for having me. I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion because I heard a number of policy relevant topics that we have been thinking when developing this work. I heard of vocational education, I heard supply of skills, although this very work is about the demand for skills because it's about online job posting, the impact on jobs. I have to thank my colleagues from IPOS, which actually were the link between us and Skills Singapore, because among other tasks, I'm responsible for the intellectual property work that is done in the Directorate for Science, Technology and Innovation, and I lead what is called the IP Statistics Task Force. That's another area where we're trying to improve evidence in support of policymaking. And of course, I heard jobs for ICT professionals, among others, which rings a bell, and you will hear a lot about them actually in what follows. Let me share my screen. It takes just a second. Can you please allow me to share the screen? At the moment, I am disabled to do that. So as they allow me to share the screen, okay, let me see. Now I am the host.
Can you try again?
Yes, I received a message. I'm the host now.
Great.
Thank you. I think you can see my screen. And you can see the slides now. So I'm trying to launch them. Good. Here we are. So I'll minimize the other information and I'll focus on the slides for the moment. So this work on the demand for AI skills in jobs and the evidence that we have gathered from online job posting is actually the result of two strands of work. An initial one done with Ike and Actigo, a colleague that now is working in Berlin. And now I'm continuing this work with two of my members of the team, that is Lea Samek and Emil Kamarat. So you will see actually mainly this work is based on the first paper we wrote, which is exactly the one we shared, and then with ongoing work for which we would really like to hear your feedback in order to improve it. Now, the question is a question that you all raised in different shapes and forms, that is how to inform industry, labor, and skills policies about what is the demand for AI skills in jobs. Evidently, as we have artificial intelligence related technologies and services and goods and products and developments that emerge and are adopted, this is changing the way firms organize their production, and of course, changing the way things are done, it changes the nature of jobs. And with this, in turn, it's the skills that workers are supposed to have and need to be endowed with in order to perform these jobs. Now, understanding what skills demands by firm and sector is and what are the characteristics of it can help assess a number of policy relevant dynamics. To start with, the extent to which technologies such as artificial intelligence, but more broadly, the digital transformation in its different type of and the way it takes. And we have worked actually on the broader penetration of digital technologies that I've done with colleagues at the OECD. It's Calvino and others 2018. I can send you a list of these papers to those that are interested later. And as firms and sectors adopt and develop AI, of course, they will need a suitable workforce. The problem becomes that without the right human capital, also productivity suffers, also economic performance suffers, because of course, firms are not able to find the human capital they need. So this is going to inform innovation and industry policies in particular. If we look at the way AI is shaping labor markets and the tasks that need to be performed on the job, this is a very important piece of information for industrial and labor market policies in turns. Finally, but this is not an exhaustive list, the prospect demand for AI-related skills and the skills that are needed to work with AI is extremely important, and this was a point that was raised already to inform education and training policies. It is becoming more and more evident, and we frame this in the Skill Outlook 2017, 2019, and actually have the pleasure to have Montserrat Gomendio in the audience, who was leading that work at that time, being a director at the OECD. We have seen that we have to change to switch gear, so to speak, and stop thinking of education as something that happens at the beginning of a lifetime of an individual, and think more in the line of a continuous process that accompanies people throughout their lives, especially as technology changes and the economic paradigm evolves. Now, the approach we pursue in this very study is a somewhat, let's say, perhaps challenging to implement, but in theory, a very simple one. We rely on job openings related data that are collected from online platforms and companies. And actually, the data we use is burning glass technologies. Now, I have worked with Emil Kamrat. This is going to soon be a working paper where we actually test the statistical robustness and representativeness of these data, because one issue with big data and this kind of almost real-time data is that the properties are not the ones one would have from statistical agencies, for instance, because there is not kind of representative sampling that is done at the bottom. But we did test data, and especially, for instance, in the case of Singapore, they are extremely good. The analysis that I'm going to talk to you about covers, as was mentioned already, Canada, Singapore, the UK, and US for the period 2012-2018, as we are interested also in looking at the evolution of the technology and the demand for skills. How did we get there? Well, we did work with Dietmar Harov, the director of the Max Planck Institute in Munich. That is goes under the name of Barufaldi and other. This is a working paper that is available, where we did identify AI-related development in technologies, in open source software, and in scientific contribution as identified by conference proceedings and scientific articles. And we gathered from there a list of keywords that are AI related, also looking at the way they were changing over time. And then we discussed in particular with our colleagues at UK base in order to have a list of software and repositories where contributions related to the AI are posted. Why this is necessary? Because not only we have noticed from the skills listed in Burning Glass Technologies data that many of them were mentioned, but especially because at the end of the day, AI is algorithms, is about software, is pieces of codes that get embedded in many users. And so we know that the community, and this was something that emerged very clearly from the work with Barufaldi and colleagues, that those that contribute to develop AI, those that, let's say, either develop core AI or contribute to develop applications of AI or have to work with AI, have these places, these virtual places where they contribute their pieces of codes or where they search for it. And they have a language they speak, which is actually some software languages in particular. That's why we had to identify them very clearly. So after having scanned through all the job posting, we started tagging as being AI related. So mind you, I'm not talking about AI related jobs to core here. I'm talking about AI related because you will see there are nuances. There are jobs that are more strictly concentrated on AI and others that are related but not exclusively to AI. And this is an important difference to make. And so in our case, we deem jobs as being AI related as those that feature at least 2 AI related skills names in the list of skills that these jobs are required to have, these workers are required to have, insofar as nevertheless they belong to different concepts or methodologies. That is, I always make this example because it's we find it very frequently, convolutional neural network and neural networks for us represent exactly the same keyword because it might be a refinement of an idea in the description of the job, does not necessarily say that it's very important. So in order to avoid overestimating the number of jobs we find, we decided to have AI-related jobs tagged insofar as there are at least 2 keywords from 2 different groups of keywords that we have identified. And one of them may or may not be a software-related skill. So let's start looking at the number of jobs that we see demanded in the different countries that are in the study. So of course, bear in mind that the workforce, the sheer workforce of these countries is completely different. But why am I showing this graph? Well, because actually, in fact, the real number of AI-related jobs demanded, for instance, as you can see from the graph, in Canada and Singapore is almost the same. Evidently, a big difference emerges with respect to the United States, being a country that has 100 million of people working in the country. But I think it's also very important then to put things into perspective, and this is exactly what this graph does, and this to show the demand for AI-related workers as a share of all job postings that we find in this data set. And here we see that, in fact, Singapore is the country where, from basically around 2015, there has been a very important growth in the demand for this type of workers. And in any case, what we see from this graph is that in the period considered, mind you, it's only 6 years, but we can already identify a number of changes. And despite the fact that, contrary to what most people think, AI is not a new technology. AI has been around for some time. There have been developments, important developments since the 60s, but it has gone in up and downs because every time there was a limit that was met, and therefore, they started, for instance, switching from general AI to purposely targeted AI, and this has caused some kind of up and down in the development process. But as you see here, the number has sharply increased in Singapore, especially from 2015. And let's say in terms of relative importance within the countries, the other 3 countries considered in the study are much more similar to each other. Now, as I mentioned, we identify AI-related skills as those that have at least 2 keywords. But as you can see, of course, there can be more than 2 keywords. And also, one thing that emerges very clearly from this graph, where we show the situation for the different countries in 3 points of time, that is 2012, the start of our analysis period, 2015, the middle, 2018, the last year considered in this very study. We are now finalizing the analysis on 2019. We clearly see that the total number of AI-related jobs has increased over time. This is very clearly, you see these bars here. You see that every time the light bar is higher than the others. But what I think is more important is that a growing number of jobs requires a growing number of AI-related skills. And we also see that in all countries, the overall average share of AI software-related skills has increased. And this can be seen even better here, where we see that in all countries considered, the overall average share of AI software-related skills has increased importantly in some cases between 2012 and 2018. And we can also, let's say, more or less summarize this evolution, saying that for the last year for which we have data considered in the paper, we find that about 30% of all AI-related skills relate to software skills. So both languages, coding languages, and platforms where to commit the work or where to gather the work from. And this is important because it points out to a kind of convergent world where those dealing with AI need to have a common way of understanding, a common way of discussing issues. Now, let's go into the nitty-gritty details now. What are the skills that are demanded in AI-related jobs? In this case, we focus on really the AI-related skills. So they are among the about 200 keywords that we had identified between AI-related keywords related to the topics and the keywords related to the software and the platforms. So this is what the picture looks like by the time we show what are the top 30, in this order, it's only the top 30 AI-related skills in 2012. And this is instead what the very same order, drawn exactly to the same characteristics, looks like in 2018. Now, mind you, the difference in the orders is not dictated by the share that these words account for, because actually we checked it, and it's about 98%. So the 30 top words accounted for 98% of the keywords we found, the AI keywords we found in jobs. And in 2018, it was 96%. So the difference is very minimal. So what we clearly see here is that some skills gain in relative importance. For instance, neural networks, hence my example before, over time. And we also see that overall, between 2012 and 2018, there seems to be a greater balance in the type of AI-related skills that are demanded. Although by the time we go and look in detail in different countries, this is slightly different. But as you can see, and really it's like a visual picture that emerges very clearly, here we have words among the top used that are very big, data mining, clustering analysis, ML, and others that are much smaller. Here we have the majority of them that are equally sized, whereas we see emerging much more strongly machine learning and Python, which were already also in the other already there in 2018, and then we have the others that are much more balanced. Now, of course, these AI skills are demanded with other skills. So the question becomes, what are the non-AI related skills that emerge? I'm sorry, I'm not able by the time I'm sharing my screen to read the chat. So if someone wants to interrupt me with that question, I'm afraid you have to do it with the mic, because otherwise I can't read. I have to stop presenting and open the chat. Okay,
yeah,
just
but
to mention.
Dr. Maria, don't worry about that. We have asked them to just ask directly or put it into the chat and we will alert you.
Okay, yes, please, because otherwise I can't see it, so I can't do anything to answer, sorry. Yeah. So we were talking now about what are the non-AI related skills that are actually in AI related jobs. So again, we show the top 30 because otherwise showing more becomes very complicated. And you can already see that there are a few, language software databases that we don't consider as strictly being AI because they are not. I mean, Java is used for many uses, as those in the IT world know better than I do, as is C++ or SQL. And these are actually the non-strictly AI-related skills that are demanded in AI-related jobs. What emerges very clearly from this comparison, and again, this is not driven by the composition because both in 2012 and 2018, these top 30 words accounted in the present case for about 31% of the sample, so it's not a composition issue, a relative composition issue. And so we see very clearly that skills related to communication, problem solving, big data, data science, and teamwork gain relative importance over time and seemingly become a very needed complement to software-related skills and AI-specific competencies. Again, this is true to different extents in different countries. So here we go more into what you are interested in, that is Singapore. And we see, with some caveats, because here the frequency is slightly different in the sense that in 2012, these 30 skills account for 43%, whereas in 2018, these top 30 skills account for 38% of all the skills demanded. But we see that in Singapore, important differences, again, can be observed in terms of skill set demanded in AI-related jobs. And here we put both skills that are AI-related, well, strictly AI skills, and skills that are not strictly considered AI. So it's overall all the skills that are demanded. And we see that between 2012 and 2018, there is greater importance attached, for instance, again, to problem solving. Communication remains very important, but teamwork, for instance, gains in importance. And there are software-related skills as Python that really kind of explode compared to the previous year. So to the year considered before, that is in 2012, this was the importance of Python as a language in the AI world, so to speak, and this is important of Python in 2018. It really seems like there is a convergence towards using this kind of tool. Now, this is from new work, so nobody has seen it but you. So we really would like to have your feedback about it. We moved beyond looking at skills individually considered and trying to understand what are the networks, that is, what are the bundle of skills that these workers need. Why? Because we care about informing education and training programs, as well as understanding what are the skills that industries and firms need in order to be able to foster better matches on the labor market and have information about which skills to endow workers with, but with a priority, that is. We know countries are striving with, budgets that reduce all the time. But in addition, one has to be strategic. That is, like, you want first to endow workers with the skills that are more central, and then perhaps endow them with skills that are perhaps specific to a specific sector, specific to a specific firm, but are not something that will serve the general purpose. That is what actually government policies are aiming at. So here, what we have done is we have tried to construct a network of the skills that emerge to be correlated at least to a certain extent. In this case, the correlation is 0.1 over a scale of 0 to 1. The period considered is 2016, 2018. We have done similar graphs for the other periods. The reason is we want to see what is the demand over the last period, knowing that things have changed, and I just showed you between 2012 and 2018. And we want to understand what seems to be clusters, set of skills that are required. So we see very clearly that neural network, that is the blue dot, big blue dot at the center, is really the most central node. That is, without endowing workers with competencies about neural networks, firms will have a hard time finding the workers they need in order to meet their needs. We also see that over time, some of the bundles, and for instance, the one about robotics, that is the one down here, you can see robot, motion planning, robot operating system, etc., as well as Python, that is here, we told about the convergent type of language and environment in which this development happens. Here is really about, libraries and how to optimize. And this, for instance, is about most of the application we have been seeing also through the analysis on patents and literature and open source software. That is, like, there is a lot of applications in addition to development happening in speech recognition, image processing, object recognition. Is really computer vision, language recognition, analysis, sentiment analysis, and text mining. And here we have, so to speak, the part of the network where we really have a conglomeration of approaches, whether it's a Markovian function that is applied, a Bayesian type of analysis, whether it's a dimensionality reduction, the problem that they are at hand, or, it's supervised, unsupervised learning, it's a random forest approach, a decision tree. So these are really, this part of the network that you see here is seemingly associated to different type of approaches that have been developed and implemented in the AI world recently. And we also see, and this is the little orange circle, that in other bundles, the number of skills within the bundle has decreased. So what does it mean? It means that in some cases, we are expanding the remit of the type of either approaches or the type of applications that are developed. And in other cases, there is a convergence towards a certain approach. In this case, is the supervised and unsupervised learning. So now, is this something that also stems from the type of words that are used? Perhaps to some extent, although unlikely so in what I just showed. However, what is important to notice, in this case, this is the Venn diagram, where we have showed how many keywords related to the AI-related jobs are shared in all the countries considered, and others that are shared, for instance, between 2 countries or 3 countries, the subset. So what emerges clearly here is that in general, the kind of words that are used in AI-related jobs are always the same. Is this, a big central node that you observe. However, there remains 285 words that are uniquely used in Singapore when there are these job postings that relate to AI. Then a question that we are now analyzing is, do these differences stem from real differences in the tasks or in the type of approaches that these workers are required to implement? Or is just a way of wording in different countries for different reasons, or by different firms, for instance, very similar skills in a different way? This is something we are now exploring, actually. Now, another thing that is very important is to understand, okay, we have seen what are the skills, AI related, non-AI related, how they are structured, what are the bundles, but let's understand, what are the kind of occupations, what are the type of workers that are sought after, let's say, in which occupational categories these jobs related to AI seem to emerge. Well, we see that even in categories such as legislator, senior official, and managers, there was a very initial appearance of this type of functions in 2012. But there were more recruitment done in 2018, and perhaps, some of you that entered some of your institutions recently working with AI feature in these job openings if they were posted online. The majority, nevertheless, for what regards Singapore, of AI-related jobs is posted online in relation to professionals. And third comes actually associate professional technicians, as could be expected. And then, there are different categories in which very few job postings in relation to AI are posted. Now, there are some occupations for which we miss the occupational category, and this is actually some work that we are planning to do together with Skills Future, that is about having a better correspondence between SOC, SOC, and ISCO, so that we can better allocate the workers to the different occupation and make let's say the redistribution more clear and more precise. But this is something that we have done basically for all the countries, so we can see the differences on where jobs are posted in relation to AI. Now, it's also important to understand, okay, what are the kind of companies, what are the kind of sectors that post these jobs? Where are they located? Is about manufacturing? Is about construction? Is about information and communication? Well, we can see a tower, so to speak, in the middle of this graph. And despite the fact that actually skills related to AI seemingly are in demand, and this is specifically about Singapore, across almost all sectors of the economy, although, as you can clearly see, to various degrees, we find big demand, as could be expected, in the information and communication sector, in financial and insurance activities, and in professional, scientific, and technical activities. And they indeed rank at the top in terms of AI job-intensive sectors in all countries considered. For instance, an interesting additional work that can be done is to compare this with the digital penetration of sectors and see whether these align or whether the digital penetration of sector could be a predictor of then the request for AI-related workers, which either have to develop AI or apply AI or work with AI, which is, different categories and different type of specialization than normally we see required on markets. So, to summarize what I showed you, we see, and we have also data that I didn't show here for 2011, that the number of AI-related jobs increases everywhere in all countries, although to different extent, but we see an acceleration after 2015 about everywhere, because we know there have been important developments in that period about especially face recognition, image recognition. Do you remember the very funny experiment of the Chihuahua and the muffin, where the machine was supposed to identify the two and distinguish the two? We also see very clearly that the share of AI-related software, of the AI-related software skills increased throughout, and in 2018 remains at about 30% of all skills demanded. And we also see that a growing number of jobs, I showed you the situation in Singapore, this is true everywhere, grows in all countries throughout the period considered. So more and more jobs are required and workers are required to have AI-related skills. Now, software engineering and development seemingly lose relative importance in terms of what are the skills needed to work with AI, whereas AI-related skills such as natural language processing, deep learning start to emerge more prominently, and of course, neural networks, as I showed. Skills related to communication, problem solving, creativity, and teamwork gain really a lot of importance and seemingly become a much needed complement to software and AI specific competencies. This is very new because if you remember in the past, there was, and this was, let's say, also in relation to what was discussed before, that is like there was some of you highlighting that you want to understand better jobs for ICT professional. Well, this is actually what I think is especially important for you, and is that you cannot, or any education and training program cannot think of endowing these type of workers only with the technical skills, which was the focus of previous training programs. We need to endow these workers and more a bigger part of the working population with skills related to soft skills, actually, as they are called, related to communication, to problem solving, to really work in teams, because these are complex problems, normally the one related to AI. And therefore, it's seldom the case that you will see the experts surrounded by non-experts in working with him or her, which means teamwork becomes even more important. And of course, this challenges curricula development and improvement, where we know curriculum are already overloaded and it becomes very difficult to add topics. And so the need becomes one where methodologies, pedagogical approaches need to change in order to be able to endow workers with the technical skill needed at the same time as the soft skills needed to be in the world of work, and especially in the AI-related world of work. We also see that most AI-related jobs related to professionals, technicians, and associated professionals. But as a matter of fact, what is very interesting is that we see AI-related jobs that can be found, especially this in other countries. For instance, this is true in the UK, that can be found in all occupational categories. So this really gives us an idea of the penetration of AI as a technology. And last but not least, as can be expected, and this is a nice confirmation from the data, that information and communications is the sector that actually commands more of these jobs, but that an important role in drawing demand is played by financial and insurance activities, as well as professional, scientific and technical activities, which is a clear sign of a field that is burgeoning, is not mature, is developing. So with this, I thank